We are tired of losing. Republicans are tired of losing. We're tired of losers. We're tired of Donald Trump.
That seemed like a different time. New Hampshire Republican Governor Sununu on the trail for former Governor Nikki Haley during the Republican primary nearly a year ago. A lot, of course, has changed since then in that appearance. Like many Haley supporters, the governor has now chosen to back President-elect Trump. He recently said the GOP is, quote, a big tent party. And Governor Sununu of New Hampshire joins us now. Governor, great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So you're tracking everything that's going on with President-elect Trump and his transition. As you watch from New Hampshire, you see a lot of activity down there at Mar-a-Lago. But where's the signal? Where's the noise?
Well, I'll tell you this, he's moving, right? And I think that's something that everyone's watching. They're not waiting. They're not going slow. Everything from all these picks that have come forward, he's basically filled all the significant and even some lesser positions in terms of who he wants to be on his team. I've been watching the Doge stuff very closely. I mean, it's only been about a month and a week or so, not even a month and a half since the election, and all of this stuff is moving very quickly. So I love that myself. Well, maybe I don't love every pick and everything he's doing, but the fact that they're not sitting around and just taking a victory lap on the win, they want to get to work and they want to move. And so I think that's exactly what the American people elected them to do. Disrupt the establishment, do things a little differently. Don't wait. Don't have the same mistakes as I think they made in the 2017, 2018, which was not knowing how things worked, not, kind of waiting on things, waiting for Congress to do everything that he just was kind of, oh, we should get this done. You got to make it happen in D.C., as you know. And if it doesn't happen, you got to disrupt. So I think they're moving forward. Again, we'll see where some of these picks go. Maybe 2, 3, 4 of them are going to have a little bit of a challenge. I think that's really good, though. I mean, I think the Matt Gaetz episode, as ugly as that was, I think he was a terrible pick. And I think Congress and the Senate stood up and said, no, there's a checks and balance system here. We're not doing that. And if anything, the American people should say, oh, good. This isn't some dictatorship that the left-wing media was telling us it was going to be. It's not just going to be his way or the highway. There is a process in this town to make sure that even though he has been given a pretty clear mandate to get things done, there's going to be pushback on things that don't make sense.
Where do you stand on Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be Secretary of HHS? You represent the live free or die state. You deal with a lot of constituents, right, left, center, who don't love mandates, don't love the government. So how do you see him fitting in?
I'm concerned. There's no doubt. Look, there's a lot of conspiracy theories that he's been espousing, and that stuff always makes me nervous. As a governor, we deal with HHS a lot. Every governor does. It's the #1 agency that we deal with. And even more so than HHS directly, it's the sub-agency of CMS, right? Managed Medicaid and Medicare services. I think Dr. Oz has been picked to lead that.
Nominated.
That's one of the most complex positions you can have. Medicaid and Medicare are insanely complex in how it works and the billing codes and reimbursable rates, 1115 waivers. These are really complex things that require a whole different level of expertise. So between the two of them, they bring something to the table, but in terms of the interaction and how government works and where this can go, it's not just a couple ideas. You really have to know how these systems work, especially if you want to fix them. I'm an engineer, and you can have all the ideas on efficiency and cutting things, but if you don't know how the fundamental system works, you're not going to be looking in the right place. So I love that they're somewhat outsiders. I love that they're not politicians, really. RFK, I'm not even going to call him a politician at this point, just kind of a part of that disruption element. But hopefully they surround themselves with good people that know how these systems work. But there's a lot of fat to cut. There's a lot of bureaucracy they can break through. I mean, CMS alone has hundreds of lawyers. Anytime we'd ask for an exception to something, oh, well, the lawyer would talk to the lawyer, would talk to the lawyer, we'll get back to you in 6 months. To break that type of barrier, those type of barriers down is a huge opportunity. But again, they got to know how they work. So hopefully they'll bring in the right people around them.
You wrote about some of these issues in an opinion column in the Hill newspaper. You say for models of efficiency, Musk and Doge should ignore D.C. and look to the states. What you just said about CMS, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Well, I mean, when you look at governors and state legislators, when you look at creating efficiencies, cutting departments, instilling more transparency, breaking cabals, finding better ways to create competition for government contracts, states have already done it. Right, the Washington and Doge is actually the last one to the table. 49 other states, 50 other states have really already found a lot of those solutions. So that's the good news, is that it's already been done. They can look to states to do it. It's a much bigger scale and a much bigger problem here in Washington because they've allowed themselves to fall prey to really bad habits. You know, even I make the example in my op-ed that even California, as fiscally poorly mismanaged they are, even they have constraints they have to live under, right? If they fall into a deficit, unfortunately they end up raising taxes and not doing right by their people. I have issues with all of that, but they are still create their own guidelines and mandates they have to fit under. DC doesn't have those, and they should, right? Well, whether it's with a balanced budget amendment, I call it a real contract with America that says we in DC are going to play by the same rules that all you have to. You balance budgets, we balance budgets. Means tough decisions, means you can't have everything, can't keep printing your own money, but getting those things back in line will help avoid what I see as a huge fiscal crisis coming in about 8 or 9 years, with Social Security, Medicare, and massive interest payments all going insolvent and creating a real catastrophe. What would the result Washington be? Printing more money, more inflation? Be a disaster, an absolute disaster. Elon Musk and Doge have an opportunity to do it right now. And it means making tough decisions, but that's exactly what they were elected to do. If they don't make tough decisions, they will be penalized in 2026, 2028. They'll be kicked out of office. Not Elon per se, but Congress. Congress has to follow the lead. That's done. We're going to cut this program and that program. That's easy. That's political. They have to really find a structural change in how they finance, their programs here out of Washington.
You are a young governor, but you're also an outgoing governor.
Yes, 29 days.
You decided not to run for re-election. Kelly Ayotte, the former senator, is now going to be the next governor, a Republican from New Hampshire. If President-elect Trump called you up on the phone and said, you might not have this in your plans, but I'd like you to serve in my administration, would you be open to that kind of conversation?
Not looking for a job.
I know you're not looking for a job, but would you listen to a conversation?
Oh, look, when the president calls, I'll always listen to a conversation. I'll always have the conversation. I'm actually excited to get into the private sector a little bit. 8 years and 4 terms in New Hampshire. First in the nation primary, we did a great job. We left it better than we found it. So I'm happy to take the next step into the private sector. I'm just trying to be helpful. I really do.
Earlier today, Time Magazine named President-elect Trump Person of the Year.
Yeah.
And in that article, they said this is the age of Trump. Do you see it that way? The
age of Trump? Well, no, I don't think it should be the age of anybody, frankly. I mean, I think the next few years, what the American people at least have said, we need somebody to break through this establishment. And I repeat that a lot because it's so important. The way DC does things doesn't work. DC kind of talks to itself inside this bubble, whether you're talking about the media or the politicians. The age of Trump, the way I see that is breaking the norms, putting things back into states, relocalizing, getting things back out to the people, allowing small businesses and just average farmers and workers have more connection with government, more transparency. That gets them more involved, and I think it makes the whole system better. So for me, that's the opportunity that I see here is that it's the fix to the broken American system is kind of decentralizing a lot of the cabal, if you will, that has happened here, whether it's monopolies on contracts or defense contracts or whatever it might be, these big time, I mean, is it a surprise over the last 20 years, Washington, D.C. has gotten to become the most expensive, high volume place in America? This is where all the money is now. Well, that's not the way it should be. I think people understand that. They've grown a healthy distrust of that. And I think the age of Trump says we're finally going to do something to break through that. And that's my warning, if you will, to the Speaker of the House. Don't talk about political cuts here and there. Talk about fundamental change. If you do not, you'll lose. See, for 20, 30 years, people have said, well, if you make tough decisions in D.C., you'll be penalized in the next election cycle. Just the opposite is the truth now. We've shown in states when you make cuts, when you make tough decisions, you're politically rewarded. D.C. needs to learn from that. You do what the American people have asked you to do, or you're going to be kicked out of office in 26, 28. We don't want that repeat of 2018, 2020. They have an opportunity to do it, but it takes guts and it takes some real decision-making to actually make it happen.
We'll see what happens come January. Governor Sununu of New Hampshire, thanks for being here.
Thank you.